Allen Iverson, the way he changed directions, he's putting a ton of force on the ground, like 500 plus pounds of force into the ground whenever he starts changing direction. And Allen Iverson is famous for saying, I don't lift weights. That stuff's too heavy. And so, like, my man didn't train. I guarantee you put a safety bar reverse lunge on him, he's probably not getting 95 pounds up. I don't know. He's probably getting that. But he's not very strong in a traditional weight room sense. But he's very strong when it comes to his specific skill of change of direction. And so strength is specific to the skill that you're trying to perform.
Yeah, straight A student, but I'm friends with the cool kids. Following the rules and the rubric. Freestyle on the bus and it's too.
I'm going to start a school.
No way.
Yeah, I don't know exactly when, or at least I shouldn't say I'm going to start a school. I have a non-zero chance of starting a school in the next 5 to 10 years. So,
Wow.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Wait, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, have you heard of the Alpha School?
No.
Okay, so it's this school that originated in Austin, Texas, and I believe they're now having different locations. I think they're bringing one to New York. I want to say they're bringing one to the California area, but I could be wrong. But yeah, and so the Alpha School, the underlying premise is it's almost fully AI powered from an education standpoint. And so they say they don't have teachers. So they don't have human teachers. They have adults who are there. They call them guides, but they're not responsible for the actual educational instruction. So they don't like stand in the front of the classroom and give lectures. It's fully AI powered. They have their own software, which I believe they're going to start licensing out to other places in the near future, if they're not already doing it. And what their early results are showing is that their students are getting twice as good of outcomes as they would if they were in any other school. And so they get twice the results, and they only have educational instruction for 2 hours a day. So they're only doing schoolwork for 2 hours a day. No homework, nothing. It's just 2 hours, very focused work. In the software, they have something called the waste meter, where it detects like if you're just kind of chilling on the screen, not doing intentional learning, and the more time you waste, the more the waste meter goes up. So it provides some motivation from that standpoint. But yeah, so they get really good outcomes. So if that kind of continues, I was like, wow, that's awesome. Like how do I'm honestly afraid of school for my girls. I enjoyed school. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I did well at school. I got really good grades, but like it messed me up in a number of ways. Like mentally, I did not have the best outcomes, partially because of the incentives that are along with it. I don't know. I don't really enjoy the concept of sending my girls to a building where they're going to be there 6 to 7 hours a day, being told exactly what to do, when to do it, very militaristic style. But yeah, and so then I followed that up. I learned all about the Alpha School, and then I was listening to a podcast. I was listening to My First Million, and he was talking about his brother who started, who has a son that apparently is a gifted child. He is intellectual, but he's been maybe not doing so well in school, or maybe he's getting in trouble, or maybe just kind of disengaged. But regardless, it was because it wasn't very challenging for him. It wasn't at his pace, and he's also a gifted baseball player. And so his dad, Sean's brother, just created his own school. He bought a building down in Las Vegas and created a school that's I don't know exactly what their model is, but it's generally similar, where it's AI powered homeschooling type stuff, and then they do that for a few hours, and then there's a lot of baseball instruction afterwards. And so I'm not sure exactly the premise of what a GT school will look like, but in the future, high movement literacy being a big component, exposure to things you wouldn't get in the normal curriculums, entrepreneurship stuff, real world experience, high performance training, sport specific skill training when appropriate as they get older, whatever it is. But yeah, Rachel is not thrilled, but yeah.
That's
What are your
really
thoughts there, John?
I'm really curious, just going to like the Alpha School and those AI driven schools, what it'll look like with college admissions. Obviously, like that's where my head's at. But like I know for my brother, like a school like that sounds awesome because he's very similar to where he's unbelievably gifted, but hates school. He does really, really well in it, but it's not something he enjoys. So I'd be really interested to see how that would do, not only just for like kids' enjoyment, but also like the rest of their lives and college placement and that type of stuff.
Are you saying that you think it would like hurt college placement? That it would be, or
I
what was your
think
kind of?
while it's new, it would because I mean the College Board doesn't really like anything new.
They're taking standardized tests, and so their standardized test scores are through the roof. They're taking all the SATs and everything, and so I would be shocked if that's kind of a downside. I mean, the Alpha School it's been around for a decade or so, from
Okay.
my understanding. I could be wrong, but it's really just kind of hit another level. It's become scalable now that AI has taken the significant leaps that it has over the past 5 years or so. But yeah, I actually think your brother's a good example of this because your brother, we've talked a lot about him. I've talked to him about this stuff too a little bit. Didn't didn't do so well in high school. He did well from a grades perspective, but from like
Yeah.
a mental health standpoint, didn't do so well. But how's he doing in college?
He's great. He really,
He's
really
doing
loves
great.
it.
He's
Yeah.
got more autonomy. He's got the ability to choose his own path. He's got the ability to learn more things that he wants to learn. And I think that's kind of like the underlying premise of why I'd want to do this to begin with, because like, yes, you have your things that you have to learn, your standard curriculum. But I don't think it needs to take you 6 to 7 hours a day to do that for that long a time period. And so I think your brother is kind of a perfect example of like the downside of traditional schooling. Now, who knows? I mean, my little girl's going to start preschool this week. This could all just be me talking out my butt right now, but I think that I don't know. I'm pretty fired up about it right now. So we'll see. This is a decision I thought of and made yesterday. So we'll see what comes of it in the next 5 to 10 years. But I'm
There
pretty
you go.
fired up about the thought.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So all right, boss man. So I guess I should introduce you. First time on the pod. Hopefully, this is a recurring thing. We have Mr. John Tropiano. John is Captain America. He's been training with us for 3 years, coaching with us for 2.5 or two. He's now you a junior this year?
I am.
A junior at Villanova University, where he's studying chemical engineering, so much smarter than I am because he taught me today what mass transfer is. He has a class called mass transfer, which sounds like nonsense to me. I don't even know what those words mean together in a chemical engineering standpoint. But yeah, so super smart kid. I shouldn't say kid. Super smart young man. Who's going to go on to med school and do some big things, even though I've tried to get him to come work here in the future. But yeah, so he's gonna be in charge of asking our questions, doing some follow ups, and yeah, serving as our kind of lead for today.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the introduction. If it helps, I don't really know what mass transfer is yet either, so we'll figure it out.
All right. Well, next episode, you'll have to give us a more thorough explanation.
Yeah. Right. Good
Yeah.
deal.
All right. So, what questions we got? What's our first one today?
All right. So we are starting off with a high school senior, a rising senior, whose goal is to play Division One soccer. They really feel like everyone on their club team is already really fast and really skilled. So they were asking today, what are one or two things that they can do in the weight room right now that'll translate to the field and help them stand out in these next coming months to these college coaches? And they really emphasize that they don't want to just get stronger, but they want to be more explosive.
All right. So I don't like to be the bearer of bad news, but being a rising senior, especially in the sport of soccer, we're behind the eight ball from a recruiting standpoint. Now, I'm not saying that stuff's not going to happen. Everything can happen differently for different people, but soccer is a sport that recruiting happens relatively early in. So we have to do stuff that's really going to help us stand out. I will counter that by saying, with the way that college athletics work nowadays, the transfer portal, all of that fun stuff, like, you have a lot more leniency where you can go to a smaller school to begin with, and then you can end up at the level you would like to play at. So we still do have time on our side to a degree. But speed being the big thing. So we have something in the next 6 months, you want to make a significant difference in your speed. It's going to depend on what your training age really is. I'm assuming, based off of the phrasing of this question and your situation, you are relatively untrained from a physical preparation, strength and conditioning, sports performance, whatever in the world you want to call it, side of things. And so strength at this point is going to be the rising tide that lifts all ships. I know you said getting stronger alone isn't your goal, but strength is the thing that's initially going to make the biggest impact on your overall athletic performance, speed included. So if you get stronger, you will, by default, most likely get faster. There are some extraneous variables that are involved in that, but strength is a relative. I'm sorry, speed is a relative strength task. So speed, I should break that down. Relative strength means how strong are you compared to your body weight. So if you weigh, for simple terms, let's say you weigh 100 pounds, and the most force you can put in the ground right now is 50 pounds per step. These are completely meaningless numbers.
Mm.
If you stay that same 100 pounds, but then you're able to put 100 pounds of force in per step, you're going to get further on each step that you take, which means you're going to move faster. So the stronger you are compared to your body weight, the faster you should run, as long as you can apply that strength in the speed specific positions. So if I'm going to choose a couple of lifts that you have to really hammer home to get better, my two go-tos are traditionally a reverse lunge and trap bar deadlift. And so I like the reverse lunge because it gets you in a kinematic position that's similar to a sprint position, making sure we keep those knees forward over top of your toes, really bending at the knees, so that way we get a position that's kind of replicative of what you get into when you sprint. And then I like trap bar deadlifts because it's a true center of mass lift, meaning that it is similar to you lifting your own body, but with more weight involved with it. So the moment arm is directly in line with your center of mass, which just means it makes it a more athletic movement. So while we're doing all of that, you can't just get stronger and expect it to translate. You have to be able to apply that strength at the right speed and at the right angle. So you need to do a lot of acceleration work at the same time. So sled sprints are my go-to. I think sled sprints are a cheat code whenever you're trying to develop speed. Especially, you're going to talk about those first three steps. That's purely acceleration. We need to have good starting strength. Starting strength requires a lot of force per step that you put in. And so sled sprints, really good tool. You can buy a sled relatively affordable on Amazon, or you can even make your own with a tire, a couple of 2x4s, and some rope. Put 45, depending on how much you weigh, 45 to 90 pounds in there. Do some 10 to 20 yard sprints, and then follow those up with some competitive sprints. I say competitive sprints because you need to have intent. It's really hard to have intent and run at your true 100% speed if you don't have something that is going to push you, if you don't have somebody or something that's really going to pull that edge out of you. Even the most competitive, most intrinsically driven people in the world are going to perform better whenever there's something that is pushing them. So we typically use lasers. So we time every single one of our sprints in the facility just for this reason. So that way we make sure we get 100% effort out of every single sprint that our athletes do. If you don't have access to lasers, you can have mom or dad take a stopwatch out there and time you. You can have someone videotape you, so that way, or you can set up a tripod, videotape yourself, and you can look at the time afterwards. The iPhone cameras are phenomenal. You have great frames per second on those where you can get very specific data points from them, or you can just bring your buddy out and you guys can go out there and race. So To recap all of that, you're probably behind the eight ball on the Division One side of things. Don't freak out if it doesn't happen right away. Control the controllables, focus on the process, control the things that you can control. And so you can end up at a higher level in today's day and age by starting out at a lower level. You go to that lower level, control all the things you control, lock in the weight room, make sure you develop yourself athletically, become the best soccer player you can, perform there, ball out, and then you can end up at a bigger school if you want to and you choose to in the future. But from the actual question side of things, if you want things that you can do in the weight room that actually translate to the field, reverse lunge, trap bar deadlift, sled sprints, and the competitive sprints. Obviously, there's more things that you can and should be doing, but if we have to really narrow it down, that's what I'd go with.
Totally. And then Zach, as you were talking there, I was curious. So underneath this kind of tight timeline,
Mm-hmm.
when would an athlete be able to understand that they are now strong enough to kind of be able to do what they want to do and maybe focus more on their sprint mechanics and more things in that area?
Yeah, so we're going to want to drill the sprint mechanic stuff kind of from the beginning. You want to make sure that it's not binary. It's not like you are working on one thing or the other. We're going to work on both at the same time. But you're alluding to that strong enough threshold that we've talked a lot about in all of our continuing education stuff that we do as a staff. And I think that this person in particular doesn't have to have any thoughts about the strong enough threshold right now because they're pretty darn far away from it, at least from what I can understand from their question. I could be wrong. Maybe we have somebody who's super weight room developed already and just been doing some of the wrong stuff. Or maybe they're just too weight room focused and they need to get out on the field a little bit more. But yeah, there is something that we call the strong enough threshold where strength no longer becomes the rising tide that lifts all ships. So continuing to sell out and chase strength gains no longer has a significant return on investment, and we start to not get the same results that we got earlier. There is no objective measure that I have found that is universal as to when you've met that strong enough threshold. Matt Rea, who is a well-known sports scientist. He was at IMG, then Indiana University, and then he was at Alabama. And I want to say he's with the Saints now, but I could be wrong about that. But he's put out there that at 1.75 times, actually, I want to say it's 1.73 times body weight squat. I don't have the number in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Then there stops being a relationship between maximal strength and linear sprint speed. Now, that's not an objective truth. He wouldn't even say that's a universally applied thing. That is only his data set that applies to linear sprint speed. There are other things. If you need to change direction, you have to be able to develop more force in a short amount of time. So what I genuinely look for is I look for an athlete who is no longer improving their specific KPIs, sport-specific KPIs, with increases in strength. So if we stop seeing an increase in speed, but we know they're still getting stronger, or if they start getting those little nicks and bumps and bruises in the weight room more readily, that means we're really chasing a high threshold, and we don't know if the investment is going to yield a high return. So we're risking more nagging injuries. And so maybe that's a sign that we're kind of getting to that strong enough threshold. But yeah, so just I wouldn't really worry about that with this athlete at this point in time. But for those who have been in the weight room for 4 to 5 years or in their late college phase, or if you've been training your tail off since you were in middle school or early high school, you might reach there beginning of your college career, maybe even late high school for a few freaks out there. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
All right.
Next
I
one.
think we're going to go. Yeah, let's move into the next one. And we'll
Let's
keep
get
it
it.
in the training area. So we have a question from a parent asking for their 15-year-old son who plays basketball in the winter and then baseball in the spring and summer. They were curious that from a systems perspective, how do you specifically program his training to be maximally efficient? They're concerned about the demands being so different between the seasons, and how basketball being constant movement and jumping, whereas baseball is that rotational power and quick bursts of speed. And they're curious if they're risking burnout or suboptimal development by trying to serve two masters, or if there's a synergistic training approach that benefits both.
A lot of big words in this question. I like this.
Really are, yeah.
All
Right
right.
up your
So,
alley.
yeah, I like this. All right. So, let's recap the question. So, they have a son, 15 years old, two sport athlete, plays basketball in the winter, baseball in the spring and summer. How do you program to be maximally efficient with this schedule? We're concerned the demands are different. One is constant movement and jumping, the other is rotational power and quick burst. Okay. Are we kind of the general overlying question here is, are we going to do too much by trying to train both of these things simultaneously, or is there some sort of synergy between the two of them where if you train one way you get benefits for both? And the answer at 15 years old, fortunately, is absolutely the latter. So, training is training, development is development at that age. There are not very significant differences from sport to sport, especially the younger you are. At 15 years old, we're definitely not near that level five, that strong enough threshold that we talked a little bit about earlier. Actually, we just talked about. We are still going to have strength be the rate limiting factor, the rising tide that lifts all ships. I refer to it often as our linchpin item. So strength, getting stronger is going to make a significant difference in all of these qualities that we talked about. So rotational power, jumping, stopping, starting, changing direction, whether that's constantly changing direction or those sudden quick bursts, you are going to get a significant benefit out of your strength training at this point in time. Now, that doesn't mean strength training is the only thing that you need to do. So our programs, I guess I'll kind of go over what our program would look like for somebody who does this. And we have plenty of athletes who are basketball players, basketball and baseball players. And so this kind of lines up nicely. We focus more on training an individual than we do focus on training for a specific sport. Now, the sports that athlete plays are part of that individual, but it's more big picture than that. I want to make sure that we're accounting for each athlete's individual unique history, their goals, their training experience, all of that fun stuff. And then we also take into account, of course, the needs analysis, which gives us an idea of whether this or what this athlete's most likely going to need, or where they're most likely going to get hurt based off of the sports that they play. So we start off with an activation phase, which is kind of prehabby, rehabby type stuff. We'll throw some mobility work in there if somebody has some mobility deficits we need to address. And then we'll typically choose something that's an upper body primer, a lower body primer, a anti-extension core exercise, and a vestibular or proprioceptive or gymnastic or general kinesthetic awareness type movement. So that can be something where we're working on balance. It could be something where we're doing different gymnastic skills. It could be something we have their eyes closed, they're reaching all different places. Yeah, just building some general athleticism in the vestibular, proprioceptive, kinesthetic awareness side of things. Okay, so after we do that, well, actually, we'll just talk about that section for a second. If somebody is a baseball player, then I'm going to be hyper aware that we need to make sure arm care is incorporated into our programming at some point in time. So in addition to having a care package where they're going to do their arm care 3 to 5 times per week, we're probably going to do something specific for the arm at this point in phase. Normally, I like a crawling variation because there's a lot of literature shows that the entire rotator cuff has a lot of really high EMG activity whenever you are in a crawling position. So something where you're really pressing through those hands in a closed kinetic chain. But I also, if I really want, if I have somebody who I know we need to double down on a specific muscle or muscle group, like say we really need to get those backside rotator cuff muscles, we'll do something that is true rotator cuff, external rotation specific. So something where we're going to hit teres minor and infraspinatus. And so that could be a band uppercut. It could be a 90-90 cable external rotation or 0 degrees, something along those lines. So as a baseball player, we want to make sure you get your arm care in there. As a basketball player, the needs analysis is going to show us, hey, you're most likely going to have some sort of knee pain at some point in time. Like we're worried about knees and ankles when we talk about basketball players, and so some sort of quad development is going to be really important. Some quad isolation stuff, could be some lateral hip work that's going to take some stress off the knee a little bit. So for our lower body primer, we're probably going to choose something in that realm. For upper body primer, we're probably going to choose some sort of arm care stuff. And so those things become sport specific, but they fit synergistically into the same program. Then after that, it becomes pretty similar sport to sport. We're going to work on speed development. We're going to work on in our RMR section. So we're working on, hey, how fast can you really fire up your central nervous system, give you some of that quickness, that twitch, where you can really turn things on and turn them off with some of our line drills or whatever it is. And then after that, we're going to move on into some sprint mechanic work. So from a basketball standpoint, we're going to work purely acceleration. From a baseball standpoint, we're going to need to have some max velo work in there. And so we might add a little bit of max velo work in. That's not going to hurt any of the basketball demands that we have. It's just going to take the place of pure acceleration work. So we'll add that in there. And that's not something that's serving two masters and going to increase the risk of burnout. It's something that's, again, relatively synergistic. And after that, we move into our power specific stuff. This is where we do get a decent amount different if we need to. Whenever they're in baseball season, we're not going to do any med ball rotational work because they're already doing a ton of rotation stuff. I don't want to add any additional extension rotation work in there and risk adding any bone stress injury. We just see a lot of low back stuff in athletes at that age as they're going through their growth and development. Then, so during basketball season, we'll typically have a lot of med ball rotational work because we're doing a bunch of jumping during basketball season, and I don't want to add a whole bunch more jumping load at that point in time. And then during baseball season, it's kind of the opposite. We'll do a lot of jumping work because we're not doing any jumping at all for the most part during baseball, but we are doing a lot of rotational stuff, so I want to avoid that during that time. And so again, a lot of synergy just naturally built in there. And then we move into the strength work. Our strength work is relatively similar athlete to athlete, depending on injury history and whatnot. But we're going to pick a press, a press, a row, a hinge, and a squat every single day that they get in there. And then we're going to fill in some prehab exercises or some specific needs that they have. And so for both, it's probably going to be some calf work to be able to sprint a little bit faster, add some Achilles tendon stiffness. We'll have some arm care stuff again dosed in there. So that could be some serratus anterior work, could be some low trap, could be some external rotator work, could be some general delt work to add a little bit more mass, to get a little bit more strength from a grabbing the boards perspective, basketball wise. But yeah, there's a lot of synergy just naturally built into it. Whenever you're that young, you don't need to be incredibly specific. Even as you get older, general training in the weight room is kind of the standard, obviously with uniquities and specifics reserved for their individual difference for who they are as a human and as an athlete, and what their specific needs are. But yes, and so the short answer version of that is no, you're not risking burnout or suboptimal development by trying to serve two masters. There's a lot of synergy in that training. Developing athleticism is developing athleticism to a large degree.
Awesome. And then I kind of wanted to move into that burnout point a little bit more with our next question. So we are looking at a parent who is asking a question about their 15-year-old daughter, who is starting to experience some of those more aches and pains with training, whether that's her shoulder sore from hitting, occasional knee pain. They wanted to know when a parent should start to kind of be concerned. and how they can differentiate between this normal training soreness and then the beginning of a potential overuse injury that needs professional attention.
Okay, that is a really, really, really good question. So it's going to depend on the area and the context. And so, when is soreness, and when is soreness pathology, is the short version of that question. Um, if it does not resolve within, I'd say, 10 days, I think I'm definitely erring on the side of pathology. So if you've got a shoulder that's been bugging you for 10 days straight and it's not getting any better or it's getting worse, that's something that definitely warrants medical attention. And I got to preface this by saying everything in this podcast, start to finish, is not medical advice. This does not substitute for medical advice. Please see a healthcare professional for you or your athlete. But in general, if somebody's in the middle, let's say we're in the middle of fall, so volleyball is a big thing right now. We have a lot of shoulder pain and a lot of knee pain in that sport. So let's use volleyball as an example. So you've got shoulder pain or you've got sore shoulder, whatever you want to categorize it, from the first two games of the season. I'm not too concerned at that point in time. I'm going to make sure that you're diligent about your arm care. Make sure that you're getting things primed and prepped before you practice and before you play games. Make sure that you are getting stronger and you are taking the steps that you need to take from a general preventative side of things. But I'm not super, super concerned. If you get into maybe week 2, 3, 4, and you're still having that same level, it's getting a little bit worse, we definitely need to intervene. I'm not saying we need to shut down entirely, but we need to have a medical professional take a look and see if this is something that we need to address. There is no clear-cut answer. This is kind of one of the hard ones. That's why I like our setup the way that our setup is, because I see our athletes when they're uninjured, and then I can see them when they're injured as well. And so that way I can say, hey, like, this is normal or this is not normal. This is something that I think is going to self-resolve, that we just need to let father time do its thing, or hey, we probably need to intervene. We need to do some load management. We need to have some manual therapy. We need to have some exercises that are specific, whatever it may be there. But that's a hard question. I don't know, John, you're kind of a injury expert from a firsthand user side of things. You've been injured quite a bit. What are your thoughts there? What's your perspective?
Yeah, I think so. For a little bit of context, I had a condition called thoracic outlet syndrome, which is essentially a pinch between your veins, nerves in that thoracic outlet, which is between your collarbone and your first rib. And it presents a lot like an overuse injury. So I think for me, once I saw kind of that strength decrease, and something that I really should have paid more attention to was the muscle decrease and kind of that atrophy in that area and then up and down my right arm. I think that that was something that kind of hinted or should have hinted to me that this is a bigger problem than being a little sore after getting a couple extra throws in practice.
I would say that should have screamed. Not that you would know that at that point in time. You're a high school kid. You're not supposed to really know all that stuff. But yeah, if we're getting to the point where we have actual atrophy, that muscle is genuinely decreasing significantly in size, and you're losing you're subjectively noticing you're losing strength. That's a pretty big deal, because it's hard to notice small strength gains. If you're noticing massive strength gains, then that's something that really ought to scream at you. Yeah, that's a big one. Hopefully, we don't have too many people who listen to this who have to deal with TOS, because that's not a fun one. We'll have you tell your story here at one of these episodes. Go full in depth in it, because I think it'll be a really good story for everybody to hear, John.
Yeah, I'd love to. Going back on those strength losses and strength gains with these types of injuries, I was curious that with you having the benefit of like seeing these athletes almost every day, 2 to 3 times a week, what would kind of start tipping you off that this is something in the weight room that you're seeing to where, okay, maybe this is something we need to address a little bit more outside of what we can do here at GT?
Yeah, I would say it kind of goes back to some of those contextual variables that we talked about. Like if it's, you know, if it's 1 week or 2 weeks of, you know what, we have to make modifications to your program. Like you just can't get that amount of knee bend today. You can't get that far down, or you maybe you can't get anywhere on your reverse lunge. It just hurts to even get in that position. 1 or 2 weeks, I'm not too concerned. Like I have my ears are perked. I'm aware. I'm taking note that this is going on, but I'm not really intervening unless there's some sort of uh, acute injury that was involved. Now, everything I say goes out the door if there's actual mechanism of injury, like if there's some sort of actual event, like you had a weird landing or something along those lines. If we're just talking about purely overuse, I'm not too concerned. Like we are going to have to play through some stuff. We'll do some extra recovery work in those first 1 to 2 weeks. But if I'm making modification after modification for weeks on end, then we definitely need to take a deep dive, do a physical therapy eval, and then start talking to coaches about load management, how we can keep you involved in games and practices to the most of your ability while not jeopardizing your performance in the times that actually matter late in the season. So, um, yeah, it's if we're making a bunch of modifications. There's also the um, if numbers are just down for a prolonged period of time, um, we're going to have to pay attention to that as well. But that's normally going to be secondary to the actual pain for most pathological conditions. Yours is a bit of an outlier in that, like, one of the big manifestations is that loss of strength because that nerve isn't functioning at its highest level. But no, that's a really good question.
Got it. All right, so we're going to jump into some recovery, kind of going back off of that burnout standpoint. So this question is someone who knows that sleep is super, super important, but between these late night games, homework, and their studying, they're probably averaging about 6 to 7 hours of sleep per night. They were really curious how realistically or how much this is hurting their performance and their gains in the gym. And then what are some recovery strategies that they can use when getting 8 to 9 hours of sleep just is not possible?
I really like this question because it's a real world logistical problem. Like everybody out there preaches you need to get your 8 to 9 hours of sleep and there's no way around it. And that's true. There is no way around it. Like you can't just make up for it in some way, shape, or form, but it's still a very real logistical issue. Like if you are somebody who's in high school, well, not if you go to the GT high school in the future that we talked about a little bit earlier. We'll make sure you get your 8 to 9 hours of sleep. But if you go to a regular traditional high school and you're taking AP courses, you're taking honors courses, or you're studying just in general for school, plus you have your team practices, maybe you have some club practices. You have your training sessions, you have your extracurricular activities. Maybe you're on student council, maybe you're, I don't know. I don't know what all the extracurriculars are there nowadays. Spanish Honor Society. I don't know. But you're doing all of that stuff. And then you just also want to, do something enjoyable, like watch a TV show or hang out with a friend or something along those lines. It's going to be pretty challenging to get those 8 to 9 hours of sleep every single night. Um, if you are completely ignoring your sleep, there's nothing that you can do that's going to make up for it. Just let's be blatantly clear about that. We've got our recovery boots in here. You've got all the cupping, the massage, whatever it may be. If you aren't taking care of your sleep, if you're not taking care of your nutrition and you're not taking care of your load management, that's like putting a band-aid on a bullet hole. Like it's not going to do anything for you at all. It's just a very low stimulus that's going to provide not nearly enough to make up for the massive gap in recovery you have. But let's say you are taking care of your load management to the best of your ability. Let's say you are taking care of your nutrition to the best of your ability. Those are the first two I'd look for. If sleep isn't happening, I would just make sure you're perfect on your, or as close to perfect as you can be on your nutrition, as close to perfect as you can be on your load management. And then from a sleep perspective, naps are hopefully going to be one of your best friends. So if you're getting 6 to 7 hours of sleep per night, I would really, really, really recommend trying to steal. If you can get an hour and a half nap in at some point, a couple of days a week, that's great. You can get 30 minutes in daily, that's great. Try to find a way to get that total number up to 8 hours if you really can. Other than that, you do have your adjunct stuff, and so maybe getting very intentional about diaphragmatic breathing. So if you can, at the end of your sessions, really jumpstart from a sympathetic nervous state. I guess I'll explain that a little bit. So you have your autonomic nervous system. You have two subcomponents to that. So you've got your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. Your autonomic nervous system as a whole are all the things that you cannot control. They happen automatically inside your body. Your two subdivisions there are your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. Your sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight system. So that's what's activated whenever you are pre-game or you're trying to escape from a dangerous situation or you're really nervous before a test. That's that anxious feeling is your sympathetic nervous system driving up. It really is great for making you perform in the moment. It drives all this blood flow to your muscles, so that way you have the ability to use everything that you've got from a physical standpoint. It's developed to help us run away from lions and tigers and bears and all that fun stuff. But it's really bad to be in a sympathetic nervous system state whenever you're trying to recover. And so your other side of things is your parasympathetic nervous system. Your parasympathetic nervous system is known as your rest and digest system. And so that's whenever more blood flows diverted to your gut to help you absorb more nutrients. It helps you just really heal up everything that you've done while you're in that sympathetic nervous state. So if there's some stuff that we can do immediately after your workout to shut down that sympathetic nervous system and ramp up that parasympathetic nervous system, that can be beneficial in making up for some of that lost rest that we might not be able to get on a daily basis. And so our favorite method here is to do some diaphragmatic breathing, some box breathing, where we have you lay on a table with a light off for about 10 minutes or so. You elevate your feet so that way your knees and hips are about 90 degrees. We have you put your hand on your stomach and your other hand on your chest, and you close your eyes. And the goal is to try to take about a 6-second breath in where you only feel your stomach rise up. You don't feel your chest rise up. It's just all the air comes into your stomach as you breathe in. And then you hold all that air in your stomach for about 6 seconds. And then you breathe out slowly and let that air fall out and your stomach falls down for 6 seconds. And then you hold at the bottom of that breath for 6 seconds and then breathe back in. It's called box breathing because it's 6 seconds in, 6-second hold, 6-second out, 6-second hold, and you just repeat that cycle. If you can do that for 10 minutes after a workout, it's going to help you jumpstart that parasympathetic nervous system response, and you should be able to help yourself recover a little bit better after those sessions. The other way to jumpstart your parasympathetic nervous system is to do something you just really enjoy. Just if you have a TV show that you really like, you have a book that you really like, just something that's super relaxing, you really enjoy, taking a nice bath at the end of the day, that's also going to help you jumpstart that parasympathetic nervous response and help your recovery process go a little bit more smoothly.
Totally. I know for me right now in college, I actually just looked. My average over the last week was 6.5 hours, which coming into these first week of classes is definitely tough. But I know getting that nutrition right is really something that helps me personally. But yeah,
What's preventing you from getting sleep at college right now? Like, what's your big limiting factor?
I would say the class load, extracurriculars, and then training load is kind of the three-headed dragon that keeps me out of it. And I'm currently living with my three best friends, which
There you
makes it
go.
tough.
That's the
Yeah,
real answer right there, John. Yeah,
I'm
that's the
I'm
real
in bed
answer.
every night by I think I'm asleep by 11 almost every night. Just getting up early
Why do you get up early?
so I can
Besides your
train.
classes.
Yeah, I'd like to
Okay,
train before class and then get stuff done. I feel like that's when I'm the most productive.
I got you. I'm a morning person as well, but I wouldn't qualify 11 as too early there though, John. I don't know if that's a. But for college, you are allowed to do as you like in that situation in college. It's a special time. Go have some fun, be safe. Don't do anything crazy at all. Um, but yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah,
I also don't get any sleep. Mine has
yeah,
nothing to do with any of that, though. It has to do with a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old who are bad sleepers and early risers and very demanding, very, very demanding. So, um, But yeah, so that's what I'd say though. Get parasympathetic. Need to get that tattooed on me somewhere.
Love it. Going into this sleep a little bit more, there's at least 17 different sleep tracking and recovery tracking wearable devices and apps. What do you think about how effective is that for kind of your average athlete?
Yeah, I think it's something. I think it's really dependent on how that athlete interprets that and how they view it. And so it can be an awesome tool to help motivate a kid to get more sleep because like, oh, I got a good number, I got a good score. But it also can be a deterrent and can kind of like the whoop. I think the whoop. I don't. Do you know why it's called the whoop? It's called whoop. Do you know why it's called whoop?
I have no idea.
So the guy who invented it, I listened to a podcast with him on how I built this. It's a good episode if you're curious. But he was a rower at Harvard. I think he was a rower. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he was a rower at Harvard.
Mhm.
Um, and that was just something him and his friends. Maybe he wasn't a rower. I'm dwelling on that. But yeah, so it's something him and his friends would say like before a workout to be like, "How you feeling today?" I got whoop. You? I got whoop. I got whoop. And so like it became like I got energy. I got juice. I got that. I'm in it today. And so that's why whenever he created his tracker, it was basically how much whoop you got. Do you have whoop? I think it's actually pretty cool.
I like
But yeah, I think it's a great device. I think it's awesome, but you can't use it as your sole barometer for whether or not you're going to have a good training day that day. Anybody who's worn those things long enough knows that you could be severely in the red and then you could have the best training day of your life. You could ball out, you could perform, you could PR on every single test. And it's like, hey, A plus B is not equal C right here. And so it's a data point. It's helpful. It's the same as like our daily readiness assessments. It's something you want to look at, but it does not tell the whole story. If you have somebody who can understand that and be like, you know what, like I'm red, but I feel good today, then like that's okay. It's something just it just motivates them. It's something that we can get more data points. But if you have somebody who's like, man, I'm red today. I'm gonna have a bad day. I'm not gonna be able to train today very well. I'm gonna perform badly. Then I want to rip that thing off your wrist and never let you wear it again because like you can't just let that dictate everything. It's a data point. It's not the entire story. So it depends on how each athlete kind of understands and interprets the data and the story that data is telling. So the other thing I will say about those is there's no wearable that's actually really good at detecting different phases of sleep. And so, like, they're solid at detecting how much time you spent in bed, and most likely as a proxy, how much time you've actually spent sleeping. But the different phases of sleep, it's just all hodgepodge guessing. There's no way for them to actually get good data out of that unless you're actually doing a sleep study and you have some EEG monitoring going on. But yeah, so I think they can be very helpful, but also they could be very hurtful for some wrong people. Do you use one?
I have a Garmin which tracks my sleep. Um, a big thing with the Garmin is the HRV, which is the heart rate variability. I pay attention to that probably a little bit too much, but
Do you
yeah,
know
it
what
keeps me
HRV
on.
is? Do you know how they measure HRV or what it kind of is a proxy measure for?
I have no idea. I just know it's the kind of the time in between your heartbeats.
Yes, and so
So
it's
I
how
know
much
it's supposed to
variation.
be like a recovery score, right? Like high HRV, at least within your range, is supposed to mean that you're well recovered and you're feeling good.
Yes, because it is a measure of how parasympathetic you are. If you have a high HRV, you have stronger vagus nerve activity. If you have a low HRV, you have weaker vagus nerve activity, and so the vagus nerve is a reflection of how active your parasympathetic system is at that point in time. So HRV is a proxy measure for your quote unquote parasympatheticness. So how parasympathetic are you? So yeah, it all comes full circle. Get parasympathetic. Like I said, I got to get it tattooed on my body somewhere.
Love it. All right, now we're going to move into a little bit more of the mental side of what we do. So we're starting off here with a question about kind of young female athletes. And so they ask from a psychological standpoint that they are very aware of the pressures on these young female athletes regarding body image and nutrition. How do you, as a coach, talk about concepts like gaining muscle or losing fat in a way that is healthy and performance focused rather than just purely aesthetic in order to kind of try to avoid these eating disorder and kind of triggering those habits?
They're coming with the hard hitters today, Mr.
They really are.
Tropiano. Like these are not like easy questions. These are very, but I like it again. It's a very real world, like this isn't an ideal situation in a textbook, like where you just get to control how much somebody eats. You get to tell them you need to eat this, this, and this. There are real human beings that we're working with who have real feelings, real emotions, real different interpretations of whatever information you try to give them. And so you have to be very cautious of this. And so I am very, very, very aware of the implications that a conversation about nutrition can have with a young athlete, especially with a young female athlete. And so we need to make sure that we phrase these things in a very, very careful way while also not being avoidant. I think some coaches and some professionals go too far down the spectrum where they never have a conversation about nutrition because they're afraid of the negative implications about it. But that can also be very dangerous. Nutrition is a magic tool that we have at our disposal to be able to transform somebody's mind, somebody's body, and somebody's soul. And so we need to make sure that we are able to have those conversations in a nuanced way and allow them to be fruitful while not having either end of the spectrum where we force them too hard and it becomes negative, or we just completely avoid it and we just pretend it doesn't exist and it's not having any implications. So the biggest thing that I would say here is to kind of be Socratic and let them come to their own conclusions. And so really just ask questions. Most people, actually basically everybody, knows that nutrition is the most important thing for losing fat. People who have a little bit of extra fat that they could lose to help them perform better in their sport are already aware of that. They're not unaware that they have some changes that they could make to help them perform better. So we don't need to highlight that. We just need to ask questions, maybe feed them the right info. Maybe it's having a newsletter or sharing a podcast or sharing some Instagram post with them or something along those lines that embeds that in there some way, shape, or form, that like they're aware that like, hey, if you want to get faster, having high relative strength, meaning how strong you are compared to your body weight, is going to be important. So if you improve your strength compared to your body weight, then you'll get faster. There's two sides of that equation. We can get you stronger and we can also reduce your body weight. And so we can just kind of make sure that they are aware with that base level information, even if it's not specifically directed at them. And then we just ask them questions and let them come to their own conclusions. Like, hey, what do you think you need to do? Why do you think that would be the case? And then just keep asking, let them come to their own conclusions of like, hey, you know what? I probably need to be a little bit more aware of what I'm eating. And then you let them come to their own conclusions about how they can go about doing that. You just feed them questions that ultimately get them to the right answer. So you're not just outright saying that. And then when we're doing that, you always want to make sure that we frame it from a performance-based standpoint. This is something that can be objective. I'm not here trying to, unless somebody directly tells me, hey, I want to lose weight for aesthetic purposes. That's pretty much only an adult thing here. We have some of our adults who are training who talk about that. But for the most part, I am only focused on their performance. I'm not an aesthetics coach. I'm not a bodybuilding coach. I care about how they perform in their chosen area of competition or life. And so I'm trying to frame everything around performance. And so relative strength is a crucial thing for a lot of different skill sets. And so that's if you want to jump higher, relative strength, higher strength to body weight, run faster, relative strength, change direction better, relative strength. You want to get injured a little bit less, you're going to have a higher degree of muscle mass compared to body fat. And so there's a lot of things that can go into it, but just making sure that you always frame it from a performance-based, not an aesthetics-based standpoint.
Totally. We've talked about or a lot about relative strength today. And so that's kind of, as we've talked about, that strength per body weight. What indicator is that strength? You've probably mentioned this before, but
What do you mean? What indicator is that strength?
What
Like,
measurable?
yeah, yeah. So it's going to be different based off of anything, and so a non-specific trait, meaning that like relative strength is just strength in whatever chosen task that you've chosen compared to your body weight. So you can have relative strength from a upper body standpoint, like chin-ups are a good proxy for upper body relative strength because if you can do a lot of chin-ups, then you have a high degree of strength relative to your body weight because you're lifting your body weight up over the bar. But yeah, and so strength, I guess that's a really good point, actually, John, where strength is a specific skill, meaning you can be really, really strong in some things and really, really weak in some other things. And I like to use Allen Iverson as an example here. So, in order to change direction, you need to put an absurd amount of force into the ground. I made an Instagram video one time where I had, I'm sorry, she was a TikTok video where OBJ, Otto Beckham Jr., was putting his foot into the ground. And because we can calculate his momentum, we can then calculate his impulse. We can calculate from that impulse, we can calculate exactly how much force he put in the ground. He was putting like 800 pounds of force into the ground in 2/10 of a second. Allen Iverson, the way he changed directions, he's putting a ton of force on the ground, like 500 plus pounds of force into the ground whenever he starts changing direction. And Allen Iverson is famous for saying, I don't lift weights. That stuff's too heavy. And so, like, my man didn't train. I guarantee you put a reverse lunge or safety bar reverse lunge on him, he's probably not getting 95 pounds up. I don't know. He's probably getting that. But he's not very strong in a traditional weight room sense, but he's very strong when it comes to his specific skill of change of direction. And so strength is specific to the skill that you're trying to perform. And so some people are really strong in hinge patterns, really weak in squat patterns, really strong on two legs, really weak on one leg. It could be a variety of different things. And so that's a really good point, John, that we want to make sure that the proxy measure that we use for strength is actually representative or as representative as it can be to the things that actually matter to the athletes on game day. And so that goes back to our first question here of why I like the reverse lunge and trap bar deadlift so much, because they're pretty representative of what an athlete's going to go through or what an athlete's demands are on game day. And so when it comes to sprinting, it's just how strong are you, meaning how much force are you putting into the ground on each step compared to your body weight. And so we can increase the amount of force that you put in the ground by increasing strength measures that are similar to sprint positions or sprint qualities. And so relative strength isn't just a one lift compared to your body weight. It's a global, like whatever the specific thing is you're trying to do. How much force are you producing at that skill or that time compared to your body weight?
Totally.
Great question, dude. Let's go.
Thank you. And then going off of those reverse lunges that we talked about in that first question, you had mentioned kind of, and this is something I noticed going to school and then coming back. I came back and there's this whole shift to a knee over toe position in our reverse lunges. We talked about how that is, we want to get our athletes in a strong position in that sprint position. Are you seeing the benefits to that? Like, is there a specific person where, like, yeah, like once we started knee over toe reverse lunges, like they just blew up with their sprints, or just kind of the idea behind that?
Yeah, so the idea behind it isn't exactly because of the neo or because of the sprint specific stuff. The real big impetus on that was just I want to make sure that we keep our squat squatty and our hinges hingy. I like to train on the extremes of each pattern. Like we're just having mostly knee bend on our squats and mostly hip bend on our hinges. So that way we are we're ensuring that we're using targeting the muscle groups that we want to target and training the patterns that we want to train. So like what I noticed is we would have a lot of people do reverse lunges and they would just be fried in their posterior chain. Their hamstrings would be fried. And it's like, oh, we're not actually getting the quad adaptation that I'm trying to get. And if I'm programming a reverse lunge as a squat, but I'm hearing it's just frying their hamstrings and that's it, then I'm not touching that quad hardly at all throughout that training cycle. And that can lead to some long term implications of just atrophy of the quads or insignificant development of them, and the quads are really important for knee health and all that stuff. And so the same thing goes vice versa. If I've got a trap bar deadlift program and somebody's getting a very squatty program, we're not getting a lot of post chain activation, though we're not training that. And so that was the bigger impetus for keeping things, making our reverse lunges and split squat patterns more knee bending dominant, so forcing that knee over the toe a little bit more whenever they have that capability. But yeah, that has had implications on our sprint times. I mean, I can't say, it's hard for me to say that with one specific athlete, because our athletes are so multifactorial, meaning like I'm not going to pretend like I don't have the benefit of our athletes going through puberty, or male athletes going through puberty and just getting faster because they're going through puberty. Like that's a real thing. It's not some magic secret sauce that I've changed up. But I think a better indicator is that like when you left for school the first time, our 110 fly facility record was 150, and that was shared by a number of people for I think a year. We had 3 people who retired for 150. And now we're all the way down. Like it went 148, 147, 144, 143, and 140. And we have, I don't know off the top of my head, I bet we have 20 kids who are going under 1.5. And so like our
Wow.
old facility record is now being torched by, maybe 20 kids. That might be more kids than it actually is. But like we see 1.4s on a regular around here. And so I think if we compare global data, meaning our entire population, our entire athlete roster size, all of our facility records are getting better, and our facility averages are getting better. It's a little hard. It's a little unfair for me to say like one specific athlete because like, they're just getting older and developing. But we have our average athlete age is the same, but our facility records are getting better, and we're not like biasing that by only bringing on high level athletes. These are athletes who have trained with us since the beginning. We don't, and so I would say that is probably representative of our training methodologies getting better. But yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, coming back and seeing my first, or coming back in the first session that I coached after coming back from school and watching someone run a 1.4, maybe it was a 1.48, 1.49, and there's no reaction was a very, a very strange thing to come
Yeah.
back to after that 1.50 stood for so long.
Yeah, no, I actually I appreciate you pointing that out because that's something that was not even on my mind until this moment right now. Like, hey, you know what? Like we were I mean, it was Eli Meter, Austin Butler, and JJ Bloom
Hmm.
shared the 150 for a very long time. Nobody could break into the 1.4s, and now like it's just a dime a dozen. We get them all in there. We have man, Aiden Wilfong in going, or he just started ninth grade, hit 147 the other day. So
Wow,
we got some kids developing some speed out here.
that's awesome.
Um,
Have
yeah.
you have we seen similar trends in vertical jump? Are there KPIs?
Yeah, I mean, our vertical jump record was absolutely shattered this past year. Isaac Trout, he actually made it pretty untouchable, and it's going to be hold for a little while. He hit 39.6, and so just a shade under 40. Ian DeSerb still has the approach vert. Again, it's going to be hard for someone to break it after he leaves and after he's done, just because it's the freakiest I've ever seen. But he's still continuing to go up. He's got 11.7 and a half. And
Wow.
so I would say for the most part, our facility records are getting like our girls' facility record. Lyra's continues to get better. She hit 31.3 on her standing vert. Maddie Salisbury just this past summer hit our facility record on approach vert. She hit 9.7. I think it was actually 9.7 and a half. I could be wrong.
Wow.
But yeah, so like everything is trending in an upwards direction. So I think that's an indicator that our methodologies are improving, and our athletes are getting better. So yeah.
So I know we've talked about this before, kind of off the podcast, but I'm really curious about this. I know sometimes there are just down days in the facility where we kind of see across the day where our KPI measurements are just not where we typically expect them to be. I was curious as to what you think the factors that play into that are, and how you can best address them kind of in the coming sessions.
I think I'm big on environment being a critical factor. And so that's why the first thing that has to happen whenever we set up the facility for the day is music has to be turned on and it has to be playing. So that way, when an athlete walks in the door, it's not like, let's slowly get ramped up and get ready. It's just, hey, you're at GT. It's time to go. Get your mind right. It's time to get better. You got an hour and a half to really get after it. And so environment's a big factor. You'll have days that are more dreary, and we tend to see performance drop off then. Excuse me. You'll have when athletes first started school here this past week. Sorry, 2 weeks ago. Like we saw really bad numbers. Their schedules changed significantly. So we saw bad numbers. And it's the same thing actually happens in reverse when they start summer for the first week or two. We see really bad numbers. It's just a change in schedule. And so their body's adapting. There's not, I mean, we do it the best that we can to try to control the environment and to make sure the environment is a higher energy environment. Set the music, pay attention, don't let people lollygag around, call them out. We have to show up as professionals every day and be high energy. We don't get to have bad days. If something's going on in our own personal lives as coaches, then we have to put that on the back burner and really focus on the job at hand. So controlling the environment to the best of our abilities, but then also just being aware and letting the athletes know that bad days are going to happen. Some days you're the bug, some days you're the windshield. And on days where you're the bug, you just got to keep pushing forward, get the adaptation, get the stimulus. And then on the days that like everything clicks, everything clicks. And then you get the outcomes that you've been looking for. But you don't get to get those outcomes if on the days where you're the bug that you just kind of lollygag, phone it in and say, poor me, I'm not getting what I need to get out of today. I think a good example of that is I just mentioned Aiden a little bit earlier. Aiden said, I said our PR for PRs. He hit 6 PRs in a session the other day.
Oh my
He
goodness.
PR'd on his 110 fly whenever we were just doing his regular speed work. Then he PR'd on his 1 foot approach, 2 foot approach. And I told him before that, because he loves his standing vertical jump, I told him if he PR'd on both his 1 and 2, because those are the KPIs we had that day, that I'd let him do a standing vert. And he hit a PR on his standing vert. I want to say it was 33.5 or something
Wow.
like that. I could pull up the number. And then because he PR'd on that, I was like, well, we're already on the mat. Might as well try single leg verts on the right and left. And he PR'd on both of those. And so my man had a day, and it was just where things were clicking. But the session before that, I mean, he was nowhere close to any of his numbers. It was 33.5 was the PR he hit
Wow.
the other day. But yeah, so just some days you're the bug, some days you're the windshield, but you got to get after it regardless. But also be aware, like, hey, when too much is too much. And that's why we have our daily readiness assessments. If we see numbers are trending downwards for a long period of time, if soreness has been up for a long period of time, then we have a conversation. Just like, hey, you got stuff going on. Let's do some recovery and get parasympathetic.
There you go. All
Yep.
right, so we're going to jump back into the mental side. This question starts off with saying, I know the mental side is huge, but I get really nervous before big games, and sometimes I feel like it affects my performance. Do you have any strategies for managing game day pressure and building the kind of mental toughness that D1 coaches are looking for?
Let's go. Yeah, so I think this is absolutely completely underrated. How can you perform at the peak of your ability if you are not mentally there? So this is something that I left on the table big time during my own athletic career. I wish I had taken it more seriously. I had more intervention. I wish that someone would have grabbed me by the shoulders and shook me and just said, hey, man, like, the way you feel pregame is not normal. You have to be more aware of your mental state before your games. I do have 4 strategies that I like to use with our athletes. Number 1 is affirmations. So if you're somebody who's a low confidence individual or somebody who gets excessively anxious before games, you need to have things that you can repeat to yourself to ensure and drill into your mind who you are and what you do. And I can actually I'll go through. I have my own affirmation statements that I use to make sure that I am performing to my best of my ability as a man of God, as a husband, as a father, and as a coach right now. And so before sessions start, I like to go over these ones. I say, I am enough. I am a man of faith, a leader in my home, and a mentor to my athletes. I am guided by a purpose greater than myself. I am an example of presence and hard work to my little girls. I am a world class performance coach and physical therapist. I do not have to know all the answers for all of my athletes all of the time. It's the care that counts. And my worth is inherent and is not defined by today's wins or losses. So I struggle personally with whenever an athlete gets injured or whenever I have an injured athlete that isn't getting the outcomes that we would expect them to get, or whenever we have a performance athlete that's not getting the outcomes that we expect to get. And so I take that very viscerally. Now, I want and I will relentlessly pursue that answer, and I will relentlessly find a way to help them get better and get the outcomes that they want. But I cannot define myself by those things, by those wins or those losses. And so that's something that's an affirmation for me. For you as an athlete, figure out what it is that you struggle with or what it is that you want to will into the world. Or you could be, I am a great daughter. I am a great sister. I am a straight A student. I will play at the Division 1 level. I am an elite, whatever it is. I am not defined by my performance in this one game or whatever it is. You just say things that are going to be helpful for you, and you look yourself in the mirror and you say those every morning or before every practice or before every game, just so you will those into the world. I'm a big fan of affirmations. Another method that I'm a big fan of is journaling. And so this could be a daily journal if you're somebody who has time for it. It could be a 2 times a week, 3 times a week journal, or it could be a weekly journal where you just first thing you do is you just word vomit. Just write down everything that comes to mind and then have a little bit of structure. And so say, here are the things that went right this week. Here are the things that went wrong this week. Here's my plan for the next week. And so that way, anxiety can also be a result of just too much mental clutter. And so, if you're able to get things out on paper, writing is a fantastic way to force clear thinking. Right, so, writing is a forcing function for clear thinking. And if you write things down, then you're able to get those things uncluttered from your brain. You typically feel a little bit less anxious, a little bit less nervous, because you know exactly what your processes are, what you need to do, and it's not so obscure and cluttered. Meditation is another good one that's helpful for a lot of people. I'm not a big meditator. It doesn't scratch my itch, but I know plenty of people it does. So you can download the Calm app. You can perform different meditations on there. You can find some YouTube videos of meditation. I think that's a fantastic way. And then another way that we promote is just intentional prayer. I think prayer is a very important part of my own personal life, but for me, prayer is more about my relationship with God, whereas journaling and affirmations are more about getting me into a high mental performance state. But for other people, having very intentional prayer, talking to God about very specific things, can be a way to unclutter the mind and focus and get into a better mental performance state, so that way you can function well on game day.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely think I have, and I know a lot of people who I am good friends with and close with, have underrated kind of this side of not only sports and athletic performance, but just life and just kind of having that ability to have a good day when you don't have something to be happy about. I really think like this is something that really, really helps. And that mental side, like this person said, is huge. So, yeah,
No, absolutely. And I think that what you said there is like you can kind of will yourself into the feelings that you wish to feel. I think that's something that, now obviously that's not always going to be the case. You're going to have bad days. You're not going to feel great. But like if you're having a bad day, don't just sink in and say it's a bad day. I mean, just fake a smile. There's a lot of literature to show that like you can actually create real happiness just by smiling, by creating those facial expressions, or you can create more confidence by power posing, by making yourself big. And I was just having a conversation with one of our athletes yesterday. Rocco Bompiani, come on, man. I'm calling you out right now. We need to make sure that you are not walking with your shoulders slumped. You're not hunched over whenever you're kind of walking between sets because you struggle with your confidence right now. You're a good athlete. We need to make sure that you walk big chest, walk around the room like you own the place, because that just makes a difference in how you perform in the world, how you show up in the world. So if you're feeling, nervous before a test, you're feeling nervous before a game, be very intentional about sitting on the bus or sitting in the classroom really big. Don't let your back touch the chair. Get your shoulder blades kind of squeezed back. Sit very tall. It makes a big difference on academic performance outcomes. It makes a big difference in athletic performance outcomes. And so that fake it till you make it type of deal, that there's a lot of truth to that. You can will yourself into feeling more joy and feeling more confidence.
Yeah, totally. I think sometimes one of the best things to do when you're in kind of a hard workout or just a hard situation is just to smile. Like we said,
Mm-hmm.
you just feel better. You can kind of trick yourself into feeling better. But yeah,
Absolutely. All right. Is that it for today? We gonna wrap it up, or we got more?
I think we should do one more.
We got one more.
I'd like to look at this ID camp one we got right above.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. So for the last question today, we are talking about showcases and ID camps. So this person has a couple of them coming up, and this means playing multiple high intensity games in one weekend. They're really curious about how they should be eating and recovering during the weekend between games, and then just to make sure that they're as sharp as they can in the last game as they are in the first.
Okay. I like it. Um, yeah. So we need to make sure that you are fueling yourself in a way that is different than mom and dad. This is a big misnomer that is out there. A healthy diet is not a healthy diet. It's not a healthy diet. People need different things based off of what their unique demands are. So, what I'm alluding to here is mom and dad are very prone to suggesting you need less sugar, you need less carbohydrates, you need to have just have more protein, you need to cut out carbs, whatever it is. And so that's a big thing in the general public's view of what a healthy diet is. Now, I need you to get high quality protein in, but I also need you to get high quality carbohydrates in if you're going to be playing multiple high intensity games in one weekend. So, from an eating perspective, from a nutrition standpoint, make sure you hit your protein number. And so that's probably going to be about, I like to suggest about 0.9 grams per pound of body weight. So if you weigh 100 pounds, that's about 90 grams of protein. You're probably not going to eat too much. So most of the extra, if you eat too much protein, you're probably just going to urinate it out. So it's okay to eat more, but you need to give yourself enough protein to rebuild the muscles that you're breaking down during competition. Muscles are made of protein, so you need to make sure you're intaking enough to be able to rebuild those after competition ends. But carbohydrates are your main source of energy. We use glucose as our main source of fuel. And so glucose is sugar. So we need to make sure that we are getting carbohydrates in our system. If you are the night before, or if you have hours, plenty of hours before your game starts, then you want to have a little bit slower digesting carbohydrates. So that's going to be something with a low glycemic, and wait, why am I tripping on the glycemic index? You're a triathlete. Is high glycemic index something that gets you in your body fast, or is it a low glycemic index that gets you in your body fast?
No idea. I just know that I get to eat a lot of candy and fruit. So,
All right.
kind of my
So
big
high
takeaway.
glycemic index. Okay. So low glycemic index foods the night before and maybe the morning of, if you have plenty of time before game day. So that's going to be your pastas, your whole grain type foods. Those are going to be slower digesting. But if you are playing games in rapid succession, then you need to get some high glycemic index foods, which are going to be your more sugary foods. And so that's why you see your triathletes like John over there who eat, candies and, glucose drinks or whatever it is. I'm not in the endurance world, man. I don't know, the gels, whatever
Yeah.
you guys
Gels,
take.
carb mixes, anything you can get.
Yeah, and so you need those sugars to be able to fuel your body. And so at halftime of our games, we would have white bread, peanut butter, and jelly sandwiches available to us, which were fine. That's why you have things like Gatorades that have high sugar volumes. And so you don't want to be just chugging Gatorades on an off day where you're just chilling, but in between games or during games, there's a reason why those were designed with a lot of sugars in them, a lot of carbohydrates, because you need those to fuel your body. And so make sure you hit your protein number, eat low glycemic index foods the night before or morning of, and then in between games get something that's fast digesting. It's going to get into your body quickly. Get parasympathetic after games from a recovery standpoint. You can refer back to earlier in the podcast to get the full recovery window. But yeah, from a nutrition standpoint, get some fruit in you. Those are going to be low or high glycemic food indexes, high glycemic index foods. Could be some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, just something that's going to get into your body relatively quickly.
All right. Well, I think that that's our last question for today.
I actually really enjoyed doing this. I don't know about you, John.
Oh yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, so we'll be doing more of these in the future. If you have any thoughts, any questions, I'd love you to shoot me an email or an Instagram DM. Let me know. Let me know if you have any questions. We'll put the link for questions in the show notes. That way you can just click in there and ask questions for the next one. Other than that, go be great out there, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, straight A student, but I'm friends with the cool kids. Following the rules and the rubric. Freestyle on the bus and it's too lit.